Hey there, little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast. In this edition, we begin covering the brand new series on Starz, American Gods, starting with episode 1, titled, I forgot to look that up. So anyway, we are going to get into it, and I am about to be podcasting with Devin, and I'm fucking stoked because it's been like 2 fucking months. That was our last Skype call. It reminded me when I went to call you.
Buddy.
I missed you.
I missed this. This became such a thing for me to get my soul out into the mic and just bro out with you. We need to bro out some more.
I know. It's nice. The virtual bromance is a good, I don't know, escape from family life, which I know you lead as well.
Yep. I get to lock myself up in the office and no one can come in. And everyone has to be quiet. It's nice.
Right?
It's self-lecture.
Oh, God, it's so good. Anyway, well, before we get into it, let's just do the general housekeeping. Please find a way to support us. It doesn't have to be money, although we do have a Patreon account. You can go to patreon.com and look up Boob Tube Buddies and give as little as $1 a month to support the 200 plus episodes that we have put out. But I also understand if you don't want to put any money on the line, what you can also do is just share us out on social media, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It doesn't matter. Also, just rating us on Apple Podcast and subscribing. That also helps let people find us. But without much of that, let's get into the show. So before we get too much into it, you read this novel Once Upon a Time, Devin, right?
Yeah, I read it a long time ago, and I went back to reread it. And I ended up putting it down 2 weeks ago for some reason. And I was in the middle of a fantastic chapter. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book. I'm going to finish it up over the next, hopefully, week. It's fighting between a reread of Lord of the Rings right now. Okay. But yeah, I'm well versed because I noticed that this is only season 1. So it looks like they're looking for season 2. So there's a good chance that this season might not even, get into where I've reread into. But yes, well versed on the book.
Gotcha. So we will try as hard as we can to commit to not doing spoilers at the same time. Right. If we get to where we might be doing spoilers, he will just announce it, and then you can use that handy little button on the Apple Podcast app and hit forward by 15 seconds. But kind of like the Preacher podcast, the first one ever that we did, Foxman and I read the comics. I did what I could to not spoil anything while also providing context. So hopefully we'll be able to provide that perspective while also cracking wise about the show. So the opening scene has Viking lore, which is not anything, alarming if you're a Gaiman fan, right? You're gonna see that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. He loves his Vikings, and he just released a new book that he went back to retell some of the Valhalla stories just in kind of a modern and I haven't picked it up yet, but that's something. I'm a big sucker for the Viking stuff, so I want to check that out.
Yeah, I have always loved Viking lore, so I never really read Thor till probably my teenage years, but I used to religiously read the comics portion of the newspaper every day, and so much so that before I actually started collecting comics, I would save the newspapers in our garage. And specifically, I loved Hagar the Horrible, who was a Viking and drank a lot. So I don't know what it is, but I've always loved Vikings. I thought it was kind of badass when they gouged their eyes out, trying to give to the god to win this war with this other tribe.
The whole sequence was awesome. It started off kind of low key, and then when you get the arrows just kind of fly in and pepper him like a porcupine, it was so unnerving that almost the stabbing out the eyes and the sacrificing that they're doing, I was like, this is child's play next to 1,000 arrows pitching in this guy.
One thing, I have mixed feelings so far about the show. I am not comfortable with the source material. I am a Neil Gaiman fan. I even met the man once, but we'll save that maybe for another show. But I really do like a handful of moments in the show, and I also like how it switches tone. So I enjoy that it's kind of like this epic Viking fantasy, and it seems kind of grounded in realism to an extent. It's gritty, it's visceral, it's got muted colors, and then just the inhuman amount of arrows and accuracy that's very like shticky and comicky. Kind of echoes of the type of gallows humor you would see in like Ash vs. Evil Dead. They even have a conversation about gallows humor. So that was actually the first moment that really had me wanting to, dig into the episode, because I really watched it. I didn't see any trailers, haven't looked into the book. I just knew it was one that existed, and kind of was just experiencing it raw.
Yeah, I mean, I've read. So you're a fan of his graphic novel, and so I've read obviously American Gods, and I read Stardust, which was his kind of little fantasy thing. Yeah. And
that was a
one
great
of the
movie.
things that I get from Gaiman is he tends to be, when it comes to being an author, it's quality over quantity. I think I've slowly kind of, as I've matured from reading, I tend to it used to be like, oh, I don't want to pick up a book series unless it's this epic fantasy novel of 18 books in Wheel of Time and all that stuff.
You want to really get lost in it and never leave. Yeah.
And now I'm starting to pull back into, like, I reread Hobbit last week, and it's only 200 pages long, but every single line is poetry. And Gaiman, for me, and maybe it's different in the other stuff, he's very subtle, he's very soft in quality, and this episode and the show so far has been very explosive and colorful. And so I'm curious if your take, does it match the tone from his graphic novel?
I would say yes. So, I mean, yes and no. He has a series called Sandman that he's probably most known for. And Sandman went on for, I think 60 issues or something like that, which is a lot of issues. I mean, you're doing one issue a month, one chapter a month. So there's deadlines, like content has to be out there. So it's one of those things that, that's very much a, quantity job, right? It's not like some other great comic works like Mouse, about the Holocaust, where there's that and then a sequel and no one else could tell you what else this dude's done. Like, this is a fairly extensive body of work that ran for 4 years straight. Like, so 4 years straight of turning in content every month. But what was so unique about it is he is very much more in the fantasy realm, a very poetic, but also kind of like with this sardonic sense of British humor. And he would use the Sandman series as a way to pretty much just talk about whatever he wanted every month, because it was such a like a nebulous universe. It wasn't like this linear story. A lot of them were standalones that just had some of these similar characters in the dream world connecting to one another, that you could do whatever you really wanted with it. So I think that lended to the fact that you constantly got quality. It wasn't meant to be this, I mean, it was, but it wasn't like this giant 10-book series like feel that some of these other big universes have. He's done a lot of other stuff, but like he's been a lot more sparse and also gone back and forth between comics and film. But he's definitely not like some comic creators that are like a working man's comic writer. Like, they have a monthly book every single month for the 40 years of the industry. So he does have a much smaller amount of output than many other comic writers. That's a giant long answer. I apologize.
Well, and he's also EP or executive producer on this, so he obviously has a hand in the creative direction of the show. And this opening sequence, both the cinematic credits, which in itself was gorgeous, and then the
phenomenal.
Viking was just like, okay, here's a very explosive. Like, he always tends to be rather colorful, but for him to sit there and then have like this, I mean, the blood put Tarantino to shame. This was just like these aren't Vikings, these are balloons filled with blood just popping.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I had mixed feelings about that. I absolutely loved the American Gods opening sequence, the vision of it, and then also the dude that did the score. I think his name's like Brian Retzel. I think he also worked with Trent Reznor, I think, on Social Network or whatever. It was kind of like a really cool, haunting digital score. But once you got to the Viking violence, I love the visual aspect of it. Like, if you took a screenshot of any given moment, it was kind of like a well-composed comic strip. But the squirting and spurting was so clearly CGI, except for some of the ladder shots that were like close-up arms flying that totally took me out of it.
Actually, I kind of liked the arm flying because I don't know if you noticed it. It did a little 2.5D thing where it actually broke the letterbox, and it was something subtle. It popped out to me, and it was enough to make you follow it. It's jarring because they didn't follow it at all for the rest of the episode.
No,
but I kind of liked it because it kind of popped out.
Yeah, I was saying I like the arm. Like at the end is where it looked more like practical, well done effects, which was like the arm and then the head exploding with the axe. It was all the stuff before it where it was like almost all CGI. But no, I thought the breaking of the letterbox was awesome because if you look at some really cool dynamic comic book pages, that's what they do. They have the panels, but there's 1 or 2 panels in an action sequence where the fist or the flailing arm or the weapon or the bullet will be breaking the panel, and it just gives this sense of space and kind of like 3D momentum. That's a lot of fun there. But after
it was great.
Yeah, after we get out of that, which although the CGI kind of bothered me, like the vision and the composition of it and the fact that they have a limited budget, like I wasn't all that hurt. But then we go to the prison, right?
Yeah. I mean, they introduced Shadow, very low key kind of introduction, and this is the one thing I was worried about with this show is Shadow is a character that I was fully expecting to just not have anyone portray well. He's kind of written in the book in a way he's not very outgoing, and I feel like it ends up being kind of how some of those books is they give a very bland main character. Like the best example I can think of is Twilight. Is they've never I'd never read the books, but I know some of the things they said is that the main character in Twilight, she's not described at all because they want you to project your own self onto them.
Okay. And kind of like
so
a generic avatar in a video game.
Yeah, he's like a blank slate.
You can fool with the cheekbones for an hour to make it look like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So Shadow is supposed to be this kind of quiet, just there to fill in the gaps. Obviously, he's got a story to tell, but so far and with the way it opens with him kind of giving a little bit of philosophy and giving a little bit of kind of just external communication with these other prisoners. That so far it works. But it was that opening in the book is just much more cut and dry. He's there, you get the phone call. It just introduces Shadow. It introduces his wife. It introduces kind of a general. Obviously, he's this big ripped dude, very muscular. But beyond that, there's not really much more that you're supposed to draw from him. And that opening sequence, you get you kind of get more cut into the character than I was expecting. Which, hey, if it works for the show, obviously they're two separate things, book and show. But it helps. It helps give the guy, I don't know his name. What's his name that's playing Shadow? Is he a well-known actor? Because I don't recognize him.
The actor? No, I didn't recognize him at all. I really don't know who he is.
I mean, he seems a great fit, and it's going to have to be kind of written in a way for the show. But, I guess it plays better when the opening sequences, it doesn't play as well with him, I think.
Well, and what I'm trying to kind of figure out with these characters too is, like, regardless how much backstory you're maybe given in the book, like this is meant to be a series and more than one season, so they kind of have the time to spend. I imagine without knowing the trajectory of or the origin of these other characters, that the Viking scene we saw ties into a character that like we haven't met yet, or we just don't know how it ties into some of the characters we have met. Or did I miss it connecting with one of the characters already?
No, you're right. I don't want to spoil though.
Yeah, so like, I will say I thought
you're on track.
And I thought I saw a promo image before watching this, and I thought it was Ian McShane, but maybe it was the Leprechaun, maybe it was a different character like the dude from Fargo. But I swear I saw one of the characters having the whited out, burned out eye like the Vikings do. So like I figure it ties into one of these characters' origins, and they're starting off with it, and yet by the end of the episode you're not clear. So I assume we're going to get these little nuggets of origin each and every episode, even if we don't get the modern day equivalent, and they're just going to be doing like, spending half the episode essentially doing world building, the other half of it, pushing the current plot forward.
Well, let's talk Ian, because honestly, he was so perfectly cast for this role.
So good. And I don't know if this role's supposed to be, but he is the one character that I leave this episode loving.
Yeah, he steals this show. And we get the next scene where they're at the airport, and that's when they kind of introduce. And the whole idea is that, if you've seen it by watching the episode, his wife's dead. He's going to go check out the funeral. He's at the time trying to find his best friend. You learn later in the episode that both are dead because they're having an affair, and
oh my god, that's
their
such a good
affair.
moment. Like, so there's that moment where he's at the funeral, and she so what? It's his wife, and then a good or best friend of him die in a car wreck.
Yes, his best friend and also future employer is what the plan was.
So he's now here with also like the widow, and she's like, she died with his cock in her mouth. And he's just like, what? And the immediate thought that Julia had was, because we watched it together, was, well, that's got to make it a little bit easier to bury her. Right?
Yeah.
I was heartbroken, but now I'm a little bit over it.
That's a part where it's like, Shadow is, I'm guessing he's supposed to, in the books, it's kind of a projection because you sit there and you're put in a position where it's like, well, shit, how would I feel? And his kind of introverted not letting it on in the books doesn't let you know whether he's cool with it or bad with it or just kind of whatever.
Because it's one of those things where, like, okay, cool with it, no one's going to be, right? But you also think about, right? But how long has he been in prison? And so maybe there's this degree of, okay, right? But, like, I have flashes of those thoughts go through my mind, but then they go to that next scene where he's just, like, all day staring at her grave, and he then has, like, his own monologue over the grave so that we do, I guess, know what he's thinking. And one of the things he said that made me say, like, yeah, it's kind of fucked up is, like, you wanted to do it, like, the day before I was released?
Right.
Like, what I could have taken it if you wanted to end it with me. Like, I was okay with you ending it with me. I told you numerous times, feel free to leave me. You don't have to, like, you can live your life and leave me here, and we can still stay in contact, right? So, I don't know. He gave her the chance, and yet it's still, like, ugh.
It doesn't, there's no good can come from this conversation.
No, I do love how much, like, I wonder, I've never had a relative die where I'm the one being brought in to be like, tell me if this is your relative, right? I always just get the call and go bury a grandparent. So I don't know what the real life experience is to talk to a coroner. I just know what movies have shown me, but I've definitely never seen any piece of media say, like, I don't know, I feel like they wouldn't say that. I feel like they would just hide the fact and not say, this is what happened, unless they have to, like, show them the body raw, and they're like, why is there a dick in her mouth? Because they did mention that it got severed off of the base, so maybe, like, the law says you can't touch the body until it's identified, like, you can't, wreck the crime scene, and if so, that would explain why everything was answered.
Well, the thing that I think was a missed opportunity in the episode 2 was that he shows up to the funeral and her whole family is there and all the friends, and he's the only one not in the know. And so in the book, he's sitting there going, why is everyone giving me these funny looks? I get it. I was in prison. I get it. No one's seen me, but it's not that weird. Why isn't anyone kind of going, hey, sorry for your loss? And then it's like, oh, that's why. Yeah. And so he just, bitches about it at the gravesite, tries to work through it. And then there's also, like, I am glad to see the show is edgy. And I don't know what the source material is like, but just to it's edgy.
Have that ridiculous scene where she is trying to blow him and spit his cum on the gravesite. That's revenge.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really the video or the book is very adult, and you can see it. I was blown away with so we have the Viking lore scene, and then we have a cut in between it where we have the blind date where the guy ends up sleeping with the girl. So this is gonna be a running. No, she doesn't become a giant actually, and this was a scene that when I read it, I instantly knew this would not translate into visual well. They got it really okay up to a certain point, but it didn't work visually, and I don't think it ever would. Yeah, he's getting sucked up inside her basically, and there's just no humanly possible way they could have made that look good. It worked in text, but it didn't work visually.
They couldn't have just done the sound and then just showed him go deflate like a balloon.
Go cheesy. I mean, they could have totally gone cheesy.
Then there would have been no question about what happened, but yeah, it would be kind of cheesy.
It was a very graphic scene though. I mean, shit, I haven't seen a film show that much skin in a while.
Long time. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it was definitely kind of out there.
Super colorful though. I mean, like the overarching themes with color and stuff like that. Every scene looks like it was mapped out kind of like a graphic novel. So whoever's the director of photography on this is freaking phenomenal.
Yeah, the art direction definitely should get some shout outs for sure.
But let's talk Wednesday.
Okay.
Because
talk Wednesday and then
Ian McShane is fucking awesome at this. And, his whole monologue on the airplane, I can't even remember it all off the top of my head, but one of the things that I loved what he said was what's keeping you aloft, faith or Newton. And that's it's one of the first things he says, and it's going to be an overarching theme in this entire show. I can tell already, is because it's going to end up being. He says, the plane? He's talking about how Shadow had never flown before, and so he starts saying, he's like, well, why are we even flying anyway? We just sat here one day and said pick up a plane and threw. No one could fly until Newton came along, and found that wind draft under wings with a little bit of overdraft over the wings suddenly can make you fly. And so he was talking about the craziness of the fact that, in the past 100 years, suddenly we're flying jet airliners. And he goes, but we don't know why this damn thing's flying. We're trusting in the fact that, Newton had an apple drop on his head.
Gotcha.
So he goes, what really is keeping this plane up? Are we just trusting that it's moving through the air, or is there an actual law of physics keeping us afloat? And that, I think, is going to be overarching throughout the entire, show. And I think that can kind of play a part in a lot of his other works as well, is because his stuff tends to be so fantastical and based in fantasy, is that you get this whole kind of, do we just trust with the laws of the universe I've written? Are you doing that suspension of disbelief or whatever? And that's where he just kind of lands it. But holy crap, that was a nice monologue.
Yes. I mean, that was a very good, you get to see him interacting with that bitch of a employee at the airport.
Yes.
But once you actually get to see them interacting with another, that is kind of when some of the magic starts to shine. So very, very enjoyable.
We actually just dealt with a similar thing like that. My uncle was down last week on vacation, and his significant other's grandpa died. So they tried to change their flight ticket, and the person over the phone said the same damn thing. They're like, we need a death certificate. It's like, where are you going to get a death certificate?
I guess the state provides it, but I guess do so many people call and scam them about fake deaths?
I guess.
And then the CEO checks the obituaries and says they fucking scammed us again.
Oh shit! You screwed us over a $25 change ticket fee.
What was it, United?
No shit. I don't want to bash a brand. Well, that's what I thought was perfectly timed. This episode is that all this crap's going on.
Well, at this point, why don't we take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the other characters and tie things out, what our expectations are, how we'd actually rate it. I will say, starting next week, we'll also have a little segment on our show from Philosopher, Mike, who did Preacher Don't Preach on the Black Mirror podcast. He'll be talking about the mythological aspects of the show and maybe how it ties into real mythologies, what's similar, what's different, and he'll kind of be bringing that stuff up. But anyway, so look forward to that on forward episodes, and we'll be right back.
Hey there, little buddies. Mothman here. This may be the last Audible ad I ever get to do. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm afraid I can never take it back. I listened to the Necronomicon by H.P. Lovecraft on Audible. I just wanted a few scares, I just wanted to have a good time, but instead, I unleashed something terrible and beyond the realm of human comprehension. I don't know how much longer I can hold on to my sanity. It seems as if there's only a thread left. Please, tell my family I love them, and whatever you do, for the love of all reality as we know it, do not go to audibletrial.com/Boob Tube Buddies and try it free for 30 days, or you too might come across this terrible book and lose all that you hold dear. I can't even bring myself to say my catchphrase because I just don't know if I'll see you next time, little buddies.
All right, we are back. Hopefully you enjoyed the ad. And what else do we still need to talk about, Devin?
Well, we jumped ahead into the funeral, so we missed the part at the bar with Wednesday actually talking him into working for him. They
which
do
he
a
does
little.
not want to do.
Yeah, he wants nothing to do with it, but he ends up, at all said and done, he ends up losing a bet via coin toss. And this is going to be a running thing. I don't know if you picked up on it at the prison sequence. So Shadow's thing is he likes to play with coin tricks.
He's like Two-Face.
Yeah, he's kind of likes to flick stuff through his fingers. I don't recall any other times where he flips for, it in the book, but he does do a lot of coin tricks. And they're totally just low key. They're not any real story driven other than it's just this one thing. But one of the things is, so he flips a coin and he ends up losing to Wednesday. And Wednesday does a ritual where there was some significance behind the 3 drinks. I can't remember what it was, but one of the things I thought was so funny is everyone's bitching about how nasty honey mead is. I don't know if you ever had honey mead. Shit's delicious. So I don't know what the hell they were talking about.
Honey mead? I've had honey-based mead.
Yes. Oh,
delicious. Yeah, it's like Viking beer wine.
And it's like thick sipping on alcoholic fermented honey. So I don't know what the hell
it's kind of like if maple syrup could get you fucked up.
Yes.
I don't know what anyone would ever complain about. I mean, I could see you getting sick on it, so I wouldn't recommend that being your only drink. But goddamn,
right?
Yeah.
Yo, sip on that once or twice. Oh, Epcot does a food and wine festival, and whenever they have Ireland, they've got that mead out there, and I go and I get a couple glasses of it, little itty bitty shot glasses to sip on. But yeah, I could expect the sugar leading you to some struggles the next day.
Yeah, right.
But
I just have a terrible memory where I found out, I was probably 17, if that, and I had my first White Russian. I was like, God damn, this is delicious. So I bought some TGI Fridays pre-made White Russian stuff because I had a beard and no one carded me, and I got drunk on it. But I don't know if you've ever drank too much milk. You also just kind of feel bloated and sick. Right. So anything kind of like non-alcohol mixed with alcohol, such as a maple syrup, analogy,
Yep.
I can just see me just getting so sick. Not even about the hangover the next day, more about just the terrible stomach ache, as if you ate like a pint of ice cream on top of drinking too much.
Yeah, pour some vodka in an ice cream quart, and that's what you got.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I guess that's what a White Russian is.
This actually, besides the whole ritual thing, this actually I thought was the weak part of the episode. Just because I don't know if the dude that played the leprechaun was just off-putting. I don't know what it was. This whole scene outside of Wednesday, because any scene with Wednesday and it was killing it. Mm-hmm. But the leprechaun dude just was, I don't know. He was a bit much. Didn't answer the fundamental why. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was a bit much. I don't know Yeah, his existence has no real relevance other than he knows Wednesday, and then he gets to fight with Shadow. So there's not really, other than to see once Shadow's pushed over the edge, like he's a good fighter and what he's capable of. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of relevance to me, so I would agree.
You know, when you picture just an old angry Irishman brawl, I just picture like an old, Flanagan's kind of guy, late 40s, a little scrawny, but
Not like
big,
the
was
redheaded
able to hold his
stepchild
own.
that's a member of Creed.
Yes, who also for some weird reason is 7 feet tall and 20.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just didn't feel right.
I definitely feel like he's like the header of the Creed cover band at the Foster house.
With his ginger mullet kind of hawk thing. I was so bad. Besides that, the bar stuff felt it's super Midwestern-y, so it's got that cool kind of like, I don't know if you remember the Ash vs. Evil Dead being up in Michigan.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm from. So this has a little bit of that kind of Midwestern-y stuff to it. So the bar kind of reminded me a bit of that. But besides that, yeah, with the exception of the perfection of Wednesday, that whole scene could probably be taken out.
Yeah, and then after the fight, which kind of ends in a freeze frame, and then they don't give you anything else, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But then we have like this weird little alien pod be found, and then it smashed onto his face, and then him basically interact with what is, I guess, another god that I don't really like. It's kind of like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. From the terrible Superman vs. Batman. Like, it was not doing much for me.
This is where all the visual effects budget went, by the way, was this scene, which visually was gorgeous. Holy crap, that was for TV. That was cool. But yeah,
what scene?
Him in the car and the guys, spawning around him. I know you tend to like the practical effects, but the actual visual effects for this whole sequence leading up to him, I thought was stunning.
Yeah, when they had his head looking like kind of like weird wavy cheese was cool. And then they were practical effects like latex masks making their face have no eyes or nose or anything, right? Or if it's his butt, the CGI leading up to it was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, they cast him a little weird, but you see, when I envisioned him in the book, he's supposed to be like, I think if I'm a guessing man, they're merging a couple different characters. I may be wrong. I could totally be wrong.
Yeah, I think you're wrong.
But when I envisioned
they're trying to do multiple seasons. They're going to merge characters?
Right. And I think, when I envisioned this guy being kind of a god of drugs, and it translated because they showed the toad in the little
he's
vape.
Smoking evaporated frog skins or whatever, synthetic like toad. I think of the episode, isn't there like a Simpsons episode where he licks a toad?
There's the Simpsons one, and then the Family Guy did it. I think everyone does
Simpsons did it. Yeah, everyone does it.
Simpsons
South
did
Park
it.
definitely did something with it. I mean, I know they get trip balls in some South Park episode. Anyway,
I can't look at anyone vaping because every time I ever see that, I just go, "We get it, you vape."
Oh god! So I was at a concert in Jacksonville the other night, and it was Welcome to Rockville. It's like a rock festival. And I was watching Mastodon, who I fucking love. I don't know if you're into metal, but they're fucking awesome. And they just do this like kind of stoner rock, but it has these like more technical side pieces and like interesting time signatures and just kind of groovy. And at one point, one of the guys, I think it was Brent Hines, he gets on the mic and says like, it's like this real ominous beginning song, and he's like, "Hey, everyone, if you got a fucking vape, let me see that vape. Let's create smoke. Make it real gothic." Like kind of joking. But then you see all the vaporizers go off and you just get free smoke machines as they go into this heavy song. I was like, I've not been to a metal show in a long time. And it was before vaping was like such a big thing. It was kind of fucking sweet. It was like the one time where I was like, I'm kind of glad all these people vaped. I get all these weird fruit scents and it looks fucking metal.
Right. That'd probably be the only time I'd be down for it. Every other time, it's just a bunch of dudes just like
everyone smoking cigarettes and you being stuck in the crowd, right?
It's the equivalent of the guy that had the Zippo and would buy the Zippo just to play with the Zippo rather than actually, light his cigarette. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what, for me, vape has been. It's like, are you more into the blowing smoke rings and slowly making it move up your face because you think it's badass, or are you there because you actually need to get your nicotine?
Do you think maybe that people people go to vaporizing because maybe they think it's healthier, maybe they just think the whole like dragon's breath thing is cool? Do you think maybe like statistically it's actually unhealthier because they smoke it so much more because it looks pimp instead of like the one cigarette they have and then they start coughing and going like, oh fuck, I can't do another one of those. Price of celebrity's not worth it.
I mean, that's how I kind of quit. I went to those stupid e-pens they had, and this was before you could vape. It was just those little single shotter things. Yeah. But yeah, I'd sit there, and my whole thing was like, okay, this would get me off of it, and then I could do it at my desk while I was working. And then all it meant is that I was just smoking it more, which then turned it into, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's the next cool thing, and they can put bright lights.
Yeah, I think they should go back to the trend a few years ago, and you were just like soaking tampons in vodka and sticking them in your ass. that was a high school trend.
Oh, I remember that.
Right?
Did someone die? I think
No,
that was in the
no
Darwin
one died.
Awards.
No
Someone
one died.
died.
From that. No,
well, because he
not from
sat
that.
there.
Maybe
the guy
if he
did
put
it
like I don't know, Drano on it.
No, it was something. No, it was more along the lines of because you know if you take in too much alcohol.
I'm currently searching vodka tampon.
Do it. Well, it wasn't like he would just butt chug it, and it was something along the lines of that his blood alcohol content was too high, and it'd be normally if you barfed it out, that would you'd stop because you'd barf, but since he didn't stop, his blood alcohol content went up to the point that he died. We took this episode in a very dark direction.
According to Snopes, hey, I'm gonna say right now, I mentioned buttholes. Let's talk vaginas. Snopes claims that the rumor that young women are inserting vodka-soaked tampons as a furtive way of getting drunk is false, and it's existed since 1999. People have been talking about it. Meanwhile, vodka-soaked tampons and the butthole are totally, the bee's knees. According to this bodybuilding.com forum where someone claims they did it, and then all these other people are commenting on it. And hey, I'm not. And then there's also a Wikipedia page dedicated to alcohol enema. So
see, that's what I was thinking my story came from, because I remember it being a Darwin story. I swear I read it on
You know what?
Darwin of the Day thing.
Hey, buddies, why don't you go out and do further reading on this week's? That's your homework, and then just hit us up, tweet about it on all the social medias. We would love your input. My God, do we have anything else to talk about? I mean, we're talking about tampons and soaked in alcohol. I'm pretty sure we're done talking about this show. Where do you rate episode 1? Give it a number rating on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'm going to be a jerk and say 7.5. I expect it to be better as it goes in. For pilots always tend to drag, but if you took Ian McShane if you took Wednesday out of the episode, it'd be a 4.
It's a 4, yeah. Oh, 1,
it would
okay.
be a 4.
Yeah. I give it,
but
okay.
What?
I was saying I'm thinking 6.5, 7, but only because I don't think the pacing was right to really get me super into the show or hooked. But I also feel like most people are gonna have the same feeling about Wednesday, to where they want to see it just because of him. So the real test is by episode 2, are they getting us hooked into the overall plot and other characters, right?
Yeah, I think knowing what I know, by episode probably 3-ish, there'll be a big plot reveal, and it's actually what I'm excited for, because it was text in a book that I enjoyed but couldn't quite visualize. So I'd love to see how they portray it. I do think Wednesday, even for me in the books, is a very compelling character. So, and the minute I knew that they cast him, I knew right then and there that this was going to be perfect role for him. So there was just visually, and like when you visually, I thought it was stunning. There was a couple things I maybe didn't like, particularly, and this is, what was your take in the end of the episode with the hanging stuff and the American rebel hats? I did not get what they were going for with that.
I don't know what's going on all along. I mean, he's had visions. I don't know his origin. I don't know what he's tied into. I don't know if he's some like African spiritualist god and it's kind of representing all the torment they went through. All I know is he's been having visions from the beginning to the end of the episodes of trees surrounded by skulls, and then he finds himself lynched. Like, obviously there are deep ties to, America and its American gods. Yeah. So, I mean, if anything else, it's an American demon, which would be an adversary to an American god. But I didn't understand concretely what it was going for.
Right.
We didn't really even touch on it, but that's kind of one of the many unanswered questions, but kind of the big one because it's used as a cliffhanger.
It's it's been so long since I read the book, and I just, at the point where I'm at, I'm not recalling why that was, and it almost kind of just was off-putting for me. But besides that, I mean, I'm not going to drop the show. I'm here to bro out with you.
Absolutely. And I'm about to check this right now because I remember reading this. Maybe it didn't happen. No, it happens. Oh, it's only one episode. Oh, weird. Okay. I remember Dane Cook getting cast in the show, but he's in one episode of the whole season. So, like, he has a
What's the name of his character?
I already closed out IMDb, so to be continued. I mean, because we'll see it, right? Anyway, that was a great episode in my book. So, are you ready to tie a bow on this bitch?
Wrap it up. I guess I do it. Hey, you guys, I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to be back and bro out, and I'm so happy to be a part of the conversation again. So let's see you guys next week once we get into episode 2. Cool, dude.
Oh my God, you butchered it. We'll see you next time, little buddies. Oh my goodness, gee willikers, we had such a good time here, and without anything else, I mean, I'm just gonna say we'll see you next week. All right, guys. Gee golly, that's what I just heard.
Please have me back. Please have me back, sir.
Oh God, we will see you next time, little buddies. You'll have more training, I promise.
Blame me.